Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Naomi, and today I want to talk about something that is really important to me. Okay, so the thing that I want to talk about is the one thing that people tend to get wrong about self-care. Okay, now I don't really like saying that people get anything wrong about self-care ever, because the truth is that you can't really get self-care wrong. All right, that's not a thing that's possible. But it's the idea of self-care that sometimes people are really wrong about. And that's what I want to talk about today. And the reason that I want to talk about this is that I've noticed there's been a lot of self-care bashing in the blogosphere lately, whether it's, vlogs like this or whether it's, like written blogs, is that, there are people like pushing back against the idea of self-care. And I think that's really, really interesting. And it's also really problematic. I feel like, whenever I see something like that, I'm sort of like, why? Why is it so important to say that self-care is bad? Why is it so important to say that, self-care is not helpful? And I don't really have an answer for that. But what I can say is that, what comes up the most, I feel like, and this is what came up in the blog that I was reading just a few days ago, is, the woman who wrote this blog, it was a really powerful blog. It was a really important blog. And basically she said in this blog, self-care isn't the answer to all of your problems, right? Self-care is not going to solve the big problems that you have in life. What we really need as moms, as women, is to ask for help more. We need to build our support systems more. We need to, put ourselves out there more. We need to have more friendships. We need to have people that we rely on. So self-care really isn't going to solve those problems. So stop thinking that, if you take just enough bubble baths and if you get enough mani-pedis and if you give yourself enough facials and schedule enough massages that, everything in your life will be just fine. And I was with her 100% until she started talking about self-care being all about bubble baths and all about massages and all about mani-pedis. That's where I was like, ugh. That's where she lost me. Because I agree with everything else. I think as women, as moms, we do need to build up our support systems. We do need to get more help. We need to ask for help more often. We need to advocate for ourselves. But that doesn't mean that self-care is not beneficial. Okay, so before I get into this, I want to ask you a question. When you think of the words self-care, what do you think of? What's like the first thing that pops into your head? If you could give yourself a day of self-care where there was, no limit, no financial limit, no, time limit, to what you could do in the day. There was no limit, in any way. What would you do? What would happen? Okay. Now my guess is that some of those things that come up for you are the bubble baths and the massage and, the mani-pedis and the day at the spa and all of those really wonderful things, because they are exactly that. They are wonderful for some people, not for everyone. See, that's the thing, right? Like that is the thing that drives me completely crazy, is that, the idea that self-care can be limited to those things is such a problem. And the truth is that it's not your fault that those might be some of the things you think of. And I'm not saying those are the only things you think of, but it's not your fault that those come up for you. And it's not the fault of the author of that blog that those things are the first things that she listed. It's just not. Why? Because we are programmed to think that way. In popular culture, that's what we see the most in terms of a woman, or a mom taking time for herself. She's drinking a glass of wine in the bath, or she's going to get a massage, or, all these lovely things. She's going for a day at the spa with her girls. And again, those things are great, but not everybody loves them. And they're not the only things. And part of the reason that bothers me so much is that I feel like it kind of trivializes self-care, right? And it also kind of makes us think, well, what if I don't like those things? Then maybe I can't take care of myself, right? Like those limiting ideas of what self-care is actually hold women and moms back. So what I want to talk about right now are the three things that we need to shift when it comes to the mentality of self-care, so that we are not limiting self-care anymore, but keeping it as broad as it should be. Okay, so number one, and this is super important, self-care is not one size fits all. Okay, number one, self-care is not one size fits all. Okay, self-care is as diverse as we are. Okay, so that means that the things that I love to do for self-care are not necessarily the things that my husband likes to do for, they're definitely not the things that my husband likes to do for self-care, and that the things that I like to do for self-care might not be the same as, like my best friend, or the people that I teach yoga to, or, any number of other people in the world, right? Self-care is as diverse as we are and unique and personal. And it's also not specific, it's often not one size fits all in terms of situation, right? So there's some times where there's certain self-care that's going to feel really good to you, and there are other times where it's not. Okay, does that mean that self-care is bad? No, it just means that in that moment it's not the best for you, right? So understanding what you gravitate to, what you really love, is super important when it comes to self-care. But knowing that self-care is not one size fits all, bubble bath, glass of wine, massage, day at the spa, is super important when it comes to identifying what self-care is, so that we stop those limiting ideas. Okay, so that's number one. Self-care is not one size fits all. Okay, number two is that self-care might not solve all of your problems immediately, but it does teach other people how you want to be treated. And it actually teaches you how you want to be treated too, right? So here's an example, okay? Let's say that I know that I really need to take care of myself, and one of the things that really makes me feel really good is moving my body. I mean, we can say that because it's true, right? Like, moving my body is self-care that I do every single day. It's not the same every day. It's different. I love moving. Okay, so if I love moving and I say to my husband and to my kids, listen, I need to move every single day. This is how it's going to happen. This is when it's going to happen. This is mommy's special time, and this is what it's going to be, right? If I start advocating for myself in that way and saying, this is my time to move, and this is really important to me, that kind of sets the standard for that practice, right? And it sets the standard for, I think that I am worth treating well. And I think that standing up for the things that I want is really important, and the things that I love is really important, right? So it teaches the people in my life how I want to be treated. It teaches me how I want to treat myself and how I want others to treat me. But it also maybe sets the stage for maybe how other people can treat themselves, right? Like, it leaves the door open for, people to say, oh, yeah, well, maybe I should do something like that for myself, or maybe I need to advocate for myself, right? When you advocate for yourself, when you stand up for yourself, right, then you are setting the wheels in motion to ask for help more, right, to build that support system, to, really reach out in those times where you need to take better care of yourself. But if you never actually advocate for yourself in that way of self-care, if you never, give yourself that voice to say, I need time for me, how easy is it going to actually be to build that support system? How easy is it going to be to ask for help when you really need it? It's not, right? That's the answer. So number two is that self-care might not solve all of your problems, but it does teach you how to advocate for yourself. Okay, it teaches people how to treat you. All right, so number three. This is the last one, and this is also really important. Self-care doesn't only happen when your kids are asleep, if you're a parent. It doesn't have to happen in the margins of your day. Okay, we have a tendency to sort of like shove all of that self-care to early morning or late at night, which is not always when we are at our best. Okay, it's just not, right? Either you're really exhausted because, it's early and you're tired from the night before sometimes, or you're really exhausted because it's been a long day. Is that the optimal time for self-care? No. Is that the time that most women choose to do self-care, most moms? Yeah, right? Why? Because it's when their kids are asleep. Well, you don't have to do it that way. You can build self-care into your day, and again, advocating for yourself, saying, hey, this is my time. I'm going to take this time after lunch and read a book, or I'm going to take this time after lunch and go for a walk, right? I'm going to take this time to do this, even if I have other responsibilities now, because I'm not going to leave my self-care to the margins, which is another thing that this, author wrote in her blog, was the idea, oh, if I just take a bubble bath at the end of the day, everything will be fine. If I just wake up early and go to the gym, everything will be fine. Well, no, obviously not. But if you leave your self-care to those ends of the day, yeah, it is going to be harder, right? Because you might not want to do it as much, right? And then if you don't do it and you're not advocating for yourself, if you're not setting that time aside during the day, when are you going to, right? It starts to fall off even more. Okay, so that last one is super important. Number 3, self-care doesn't only happen when your kids are asleep. It doesn't happen at the beginning and the end of the day only. It can happen whenever you want, right? So let's not keep getting those things wrong about self-care. Let's not keep making those big self-care mistakes and assume that self-care is only bubble baths and only massages and only days at the spa. Let's not assume, right, that self-care can't actually give us some of those answers to the problems that we have, that it can't, spur within us, that it can't spark within us the desire to reach out more, to advocate for ourselves more, and to ask for help when we need it. Okay, let's not assume that self-care can only be shoved into those times of day that is most convenient in our, mom lives, and instead recognize that, we get to choose when self-care happens. We get to decide, and it can be any time. Okay, let's stop limiting self-care. Okay, let's start making self-care a thing that can happen anytime we want, and that really gives us, the empowerment to really transform our lives as moms and as women. Okay, so that's my self-care pep talk for today. I would love to hear what you think about this. I'd love to hear your thoughts about self-care. And if there are any other things that you feel like we sometimes get wrong about self-care, leave them in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Okay, for now, I'm going to sign off and go take a little walk because it's gorgeous outside, and give myself some vitamin D because that is some supreme self-care for me. And I'm going to go do that. But thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. And I look forward to chatting with you again really soon. All right, until then, bye.